Delete recording. Ah, well, what do you know? I wasn't recording anything. I was talking about how I'm done with all this, but anyway, here's a little sneak peek. I was trying to talk about this little distance, the value of this A, and trying to find it. We know the answer, y and k equals A, but we need to find a value with an A. It's a little bit of information, details of where we come from, movements of certain particles or a particle within the linear continuity of a space-time as we know it. The combination of all that Z program that we shared with you over the last few years, and these new symbols that have been newly found or discovered. In one of these instances, many of these symbols, such as this one, I will give them many different values and meanings. In this case, we are coming in from the Z era, which led us to that manifold theory. It was pretty wild back in the early 2022s, 2022 if you like. Boy, we had a little different feeling too. That came to culminated. So many manifolds were found, several linked together, sort of like a minefield, so to speak. I know I talked about the weaponization of all this. We'll leave it at that for now, and till we have more about that. But in any case, that doesn't mean that all of this was destroyed, right? It just means that, to solve annihilation events, let's put this on these terms. Annihilation events, particles colliding with one another, and the decay left over comes in, refines this little area. Remember, we have the dipper cylinders as well, the theories that we talked about and discoveries that we made through that too. Remember how this cylinders worked in one way. They were a one-way street at first, meaning they could only come down, diverging the word line. But at one point, if we remember correctly, the development of this through this constant one-way travel was able to develop the means to transport back without any compromisation. Now that's pretty much where we left off at the time. Talked about all this on the big shell theory. For now, go back to that. YK in 2022. Some things happened. Had to be redirected. Taken out of the space-time continuum for a couple of hours relative to this continuity. Something that expands to another amount of time, which leaves us to that very long silent time, trying to deal with this unknowing about this and living the daily life and every day, and reaching this point today in 2024, 2 years after, not even 2 years after, a year and something after this, about a year and a half, give or take, let's say. Actually, yes, give or take, nearly 2 years. So, let's say 2 years. So we are in 2024 now. Sorry about these ugly numbers. I'm gonna get back into all this. So here we are, 2024, right? So 24. That time, span of time, Roku, season down. Okay. So this is where we find ourselves. When we start touching the subject of this, now we're gonna see ourselves right here in this little other chart right there, right? That's what I wanted to also demonstrate to you, ladies and gents. The point is about continuity. Sorry, the space-time intervals, if you will, right here. We got what we call n, and n spans into 3 and first one and 2 different ends. We won't talk about those 2 ends as they are, shall we say, parallel to what we are witnessing, which we are right here, but separate from us at the same time. So, understanding that there is something is more than enough. Anyway, that's the point where we find ourselves. But if we trace this back, we find that there have been different intervals, different points in which this specific trajectory has been taken to other points, or have reached certain points. Stakes have been placed in certain places within space-time, within the frame of a space-time, if you remember. So where we find ourselves is right here, right now. As we begin to unravel of this, I begin to understand a little bit, getting a little more familiar with that, getting a little bit more to speed and becoming more settled in with all this. We're going to continue, developing and unraveling more of this throughout this, I'm sure. Then we'll reach this point, and at this point, there'll be some more information laid out, I'm sure. I don't really think much about it. I just gotta follow through this right now. We're just saying ahead now for a little bit. And at that point, we'll reach yet another point of awareness and understanding, into which we will reach this point. But this will be a fairly big amount of time. I'm not really sure. We're not really sure how much time the time lapse between these points will be. We just know that there are things that will connect us like such, right? And if we're familiar, remember the ice blocks or the long chart that I made once. Just looking at it from different points of view and with other tools now. Thank the Lord. And anything else I want to show you is just this. So yeah, I'll do that like this. Hello. Once again, we are back to this. Just trying to put some things together here and there. Let's see. Specifically talking about this too, right here. The tubular cylinders. And actually this right here. The antennas. Let's just leave it at that for now. We don't really need to go too much into detail, but we're already with that familiarity. We already understand what this devices, the purposes, the applications, the results and effects, etc., etc. So we understand now a little bit more of this. We have a little bit more familiarity with divergences, right? We have been experiencing them for some time, but I don't believe we actually discussed any of the effects. Just kind of went with them. And it was, it's definitely understandable. But now, what does this mean to us today in this world, in this frequency? Well, it sort of alleviates us from what we have already. Where we come from, or the schedule, things that we discussed back then, what the schedule meant, what it brought, a whole other ordeal of matters and things, and how things, were planned to roll out from one point. I guess if you want to call it an agenda, for somebody's agenda, just kind of put it to a halt. And yeah, that was kind of the, from this point of view, from this point of observation, what happened. And we have been experiencing this bumpy road ever since. Going with the need to know protocol that was put in place. And honestly, that's all we do, that's all we know. I don't think it's gonna change anytime soon. But, that's not what we are putting our attention to. Rather, always try to work on this, the effects, observe the effects, and things that we can actually, contribute to. See the effect come about, and without creating any sort of negative reaction or affect ourselves, or bringing any or generating any sort of negative energy as well either. Our goal is always and our intention is always that one of peace, right? Our mission is that one of peace. And that mission of peace has been to bring balance to all of this that I have been talking to you about. More than welcome to, you haven't look at the other videos that we have left throughout the years. You're more than welcome to go back and look and understand our current position. Get familiar with this energy, this vibe that we have right here. We generate, cut into the chase so as to not bore you, honestly. And anyway, what I was saying here, for a while, we were working on this quantic fields, on this Higgs fields, on this, the Higgs bundle, I think it's called, I forgot. And these bundles, we also come to saw them. A bundle, on this theorization of worlds, it's like a net. Like a little net catches the particles going through. And in this case, theoretically speaking, hypothetically speaking, certain things, effects created by these devices we have discussed throughout the years collide one particle with the other, create that annihilation event, explosions, and in all of that, more particles created. And albeit our real-time reaction and observation, this is near milliseconds and near invisible to perhaps. And the theory is that we have been able to, or something has been able to gather data on all of this, right? Not necessarily something physical, but also computational devices, computers that work with all this, maybe, not sure, throwing it out there right now. Like I said, I've been kind of far away from all of that for a while, not really put it on the news, 1984 kind of thing. It's been going on for a while, ladies and gents, it's nothing to be surprised about or even panicked about, just learn the system, and it all works out. It all falls into place together. Anyway, going back to this sciencey stuff, theories and pseudoscience kind of things that we're throwing out here ourselves, We're not really sure what's what. I'm just, basing these observations, energetically speaking as well. I guess, whatever have you, this is what I'm throwing. Anyway, so these things, these particles can be viewed as worlds. And then certain devices allowed the manipulation, or the handling, let's call it, instead of manipulation. Sounds a little bit more negative, right? And we don't want to make this look like a bad thing, as we discussed in those long talks. All of these devices, allows us to observe many events throughout history. What about creation, the beginning, the Big Bang, or how this world, this universe began. And if we can go beyond the beginning of this first universe, prior to the beginning of the universe, what made this universe be possible, and so forth and so forth. And also as well, visit tune into other frequencies of other worlds, which is where I'm getting at, right? And this is where we all leads up to these little things that I'm discussing, frequencies, all that stuff. Well, particles are energy, and this energy, is obviously has an origin somewhere, and that's the frequency, the origin frequency, the original essence. We're drawing on a little bit more of Qigong philosophy as well on our end, bringing it in as it has been. This I always have observed it. I just haven't been able to really sit down and tell it, even to myself, in my voice. I write it down. I read it later on, and I see it, and I'm like, what? Who wrote this? Sometimes, and it's like, oh, well, I didn't write it, but I sure learned it from somewhere, and and I see it, observe it, and it makes sense, and it plays out exactly the same way as it was described. And all I'm left with is my own observations, the effects felt afterward, and a little bit of life goes on, sort of feeling, and it goes on, just a little bit different than before. It's just that adjustment has been going for a while, and that's where we are now. Anyway, so we found this, right? We're still going around this. Observed the worlds and the construction of them. My theory as to, the beginning or the purpose of the original purpose, as we already know, there was the effect that we felt and went through, experienced, and there is the sort of thing, right? The original purpose and intention for this was perhaps to allow us to visually, observe what has been said throughout the ages, a promise of a world perfect. And I'm not too familiar with this and the way I have been learning it as of recently, but I have heard of it. Anyway, the point of this is that it takes us to inner transformation or self-transformation. We need to work on ourselves in order for us to be able to achieve that. And more than anything, our purpose as well is to achieve all of this naturally. This has been innate to observe all of this, and also what we are left is the negative effects and how we can work to transmute these negative effects into positive. which have not so negative to think about, At the end of the day, most of it was to derail certain things that were to occur at the time. We see the span of time right now, we're looking back from 2020 to 2023 right now. I'm sure, there were some things, some certain events. All these observations were made from right here, from this device that we, talked about. The very original, let's say, the very original essence or purpose for this is something almost, at the moment comes from this point. And this purpose of this was to explain from the point of view of gamma what was captured from delta. Now, we understand it. There were some things, remember correctly, talked about the Stalin station and the Phoenix station, and the world contemporary one, going on at the same time. Well, obviously there was contact between both. Things occurred on both ends, which brought this effect that we experienced during this span of time. We remember correctly the Z program, some of those last effects. And it spans not just from then, but prior to that time. It's a little bit more truly explained in our other videos. You're more than welcome to watch as well. But this is where we found ourselves, and this is where we are right now, right? And all these explanations. Now we understand, that this was a Tucker, and then the YK comes through, Another one of these under the radar events, as was gamma. Prior to all this, from in my belief, from what I've heard about all of this, might be this bump thing, or part of that bump. That something that has to do with the bump. Just energies that are all around the earth that align at those times, and create those synchronicities, is my belief. So, as was the bump, parallel, or, something to do with gamma. It is based on my observation. This YK event has some similarity to this, this anniversary effect, and has to do with something that took place in my life, a couple of years back. I also talked about it a little bit before. Well, some details, here and there, to privacy, And, not much has changed on that end. But that's where we are right now, and that's where I find myself, assimilating to what took place here, how this, at least this events that I'm talking about, and this span of time, this interval, has helped me work a little bit more on myself, on that internal things, develop more of that, put more into practice all of these things that we've been discussing. Just a little bit more, just settle, just focus on doing it and not really realizing we've been doing it. But thanks to all of this, we have advanced all this, and this is for me a little bit of a catch up and recap for us as well, for the self. And focus on where we are currently, ready to clear this up, this energy.